All right, welcome back to the 5 on 5 podcast presented to you by directmusicservice.com. 5 on 5 is the promo code FIVEON will save you some money over there. Get you some edits, some originals, remixes, everything from all of our favorite editors Kevin Scott, War and Peace, Audio One. The
Nice.
list goes on
Nice.
and on and
Phenom.
on. Me, Danny Diggs, all the familiar names and faces from the internet. We have a special episode today. I am one of your hosts, Phenom. Down the street from me, my man, Nick Lopez. Down the street from him, Jupiter Williams. And our very special guest today, one half of Duck Sauce. He is a legend in the game. I can say just that from right there. I could go on and on and on. DMC champion, fantastic remixer, fantastic producer. Heads
One
will
half the
roll.
brothers.
One half of Brothers Macklovitch, Coachella attendee, Coachella performer. The list goes on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for A-Trak.
Ooh,
What?
I feel
What's
like
up,
we could have
guys?
done like a 2 hour intro for you and
Yeah.
just been like, great, there he is. You know?
Yeah.
And then that's the end
Get
of the
lost
show.
in the wiki.
Yeah,
Nah,
yeah, yeah.
appreciate it.
We're
Nice
so
to talk
stoked
to
to
you
have
guys.
you here. You just got back from Coachella. Review,
Yeah.
thoughts. How did you feel about that?
I thought it was really good. Like one of the better ones of the last many years. Like, you know, even just the way that they really dug into the international bookings this year more than ever. I thought that was really a good angle to take and a good sign of where things are going. And especially like I think people always look at the Coachella lineup as a read on where music is on any given year. I think it's a good message to put out there to book more international acts than ever. Um, I feel like Coachella used to have this place in, sort of in the indie side of music. There was a point in time where uh I don't know, it was kind of all about the indie bands and I mean even like Coachella's where I saw the AAS perform and ask the remix heads will roll. It was those kinds of bands, or it would be a Portishead reunion or like Kraftwerk or da da da, and like just mostly what you would call cool acts.
Yeah.
And then I think in the couple years before the pandemic, just the way that popular music goes, there was more and more pop acts that made their way to the festival. And I think the fest had to sort of pick a direction after a while. And I think they really did a good job this year at, finding something that feels like a way forward. Because in general, I do feel like the festival market, the festival scene in the last couple of years has gotten a little too samey. You kind of see the same headliners at a lot of festivals, and it's hard for any of them being the festivals themselves, still have their own identity. And yeah, I think they did a good job with that.
You played the first one, right? You played in
I
'99.
did.
Yeah.
I did. I did. And it's funny because at the time it was one show out of many, I in the late 90s, in the midst of like my DJ battling, like the battle phase, I was getting booked at a lot of raves. I was only playing hip hop in my sets, but the rave market, the rave scene was really into turntablists.
Mm.
And especially, you know, in certain areas between California and Nevada, there would be these sort of semi-legal, definitely semi-illegal, massive raves that were
Massives.
being,
Mm.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it would be like just on some sort of plot of land where maybe like the laws weren't being enforced too much. And I would just get, I was a teenager and I would get sent off to play somewhere where,
Mm.
you'd land at some sort of airport and someone drives you out for like 2 hours and you see a mass of people out of all of a sudden. It's like, cool, go scratch there. That was just one show out of many. And I played there with Hubert and Mixmaster Mike and Razel came on and it was that vibe. And years later, Coachella as bigger name festival or as a festival that has a really strong identity uh, grew into the Coachella that we know now. And for a while I was sort of like, didn't I play one of those? You know, and then someone found the flyer, and then like, you know, because I didn't even have any pictures of it. I just kind of had a vague recollection. But yeah, I played the first one. And then I played a bunch of them over the years between whether it be you know, just myself or various projects that I do. I played in 2008 with Kid Sister. I mean, I was there in 2006 with the rapper whose name we don't say. Um, and then I played in 2011. I did 2 sets, myself solo and Duck Sauce. 2014 Duck Sauce again when the album When Quack came out. And then last year with Duck Sauce again. And then there was even a couple of years ago, Brockhampton had me like scratch with them during a whole performance. So I've been on those stages a bunch. And even on years where I don't play, it's the one festival that I always go to just to get a read on the music scene.
Yeah. It seems as if in the beginning, and I would love to hear your opinion on this, did you feel like you got pigeonholed in hip hop and turntablism and you were like, hey, I like so much more music? I like, you know, because you started creating these other projects and stuff too.
No, I think that's just the reality of what I was playing was it was only hip hop, you know, like for the first 10 years of my career, honestly, all I cared about was underground hip hop. That's it, you know, from my early battles. You know, I started really messing around with DJing in like around 95, and it's a pretty clean 10-year chunk, like around 2004 or 5 is when I, you know, especially with the advent of Serato, that opening a lot of doors in terms of like suddenly having access to files of different stuff. That's when I got more eclectic with it. You know, if anything, during my years as, you know, mainly a hip hop DJ, of course I was curious about other genres and especially going into record digging and learning about samples. And, you know, any hip hop head will, you know, develop crates of soul, funk, jazz, disco, whatever, you know, and you know, if you're from a certain school of hip hop DJing, you also, there's a point where you're like, okay, well, I need to know my 80s classics. I need to have like a reggae crate. I need to have an R&B crate, this and that. But it's still a very hip hop focused approach to DJing, you know? And that was, you know, that with turntablist routines was really what my DJing was like for those first couple of years. Yeah, I'd say maybe around 2004 or 5 or so, I was, you know, going down to New York a lot and kind of like my brother had already moved there and he had just started Chromeo, and I would kind of go with him to certain parties and go to APT and hear, you know, Rich Medina and them play, and then go watch Stretch Armstrong playing at like Tribeca Grand and what Ronson was doing, and that there was a certain between that and like what the Rub was starting to do, and you know what Wes was starting with electronics with low budget, you know, by like 2006 or so. In those years, there's just like I just think that my eyes and ears opened up to a more eclectic approach to DJing and throwing in different genres. And yeah, by like 2005 or so, I got really interested in kind of a new wave of electronic music that I was finding on blogs, you know, and kind of like what the Ed Banger guys were doing in France, and meeting someone like Sinden who was like, you know, giving me a bunch of tracks that him and Switch were doing in the UK. And then, you know, that whole scene was really born out of connections between a couple of DJs. I mean, I would befriend someone and they would just give me a folder shit, and some of it was their own tracks, and some of it was what they were playing by other DJs, and I'd be like, oh, who's that? What's this? Da, da, da. And then, you know, just following that thread into all types of electronic music. And, you know, at a point in time where not that many DJs were doing that yet in North America, because I would also go to Europe for gigs and come back with music and kind of figure out a style of mixing some of that new kind of dirty electro with, you know, mixing that with like maybe a fast Outcast record, and then with some halftime Southern rap shit, and from Baltimore Club that like maybe Turntable Lab had just pressed on a white label and like all of that. And that became such a pocket for a couple of years.
Mm,
But to answer your question, I don't think I was being pigeonholed prior to that. I really was playing
it
hip
was,
hop. Like
yeah.
I there's a bunch of, house legends, DJs that I, connected with, once I started producing electronic music myself, like someone like DJ Sneak, for example. I remember coming up to him around 2008 and being like, yo, it's an incredible pleasure to meet you. And he was like, meet me, bro. We played raves together, in the 90s in Canada.
Yeah.
But I did, and I went and looked up flyers, and yes, he's correct. I now have flyers of shows I played in like 97, 98, 99. And I was playing shows with Daft Punk and Sneak and the, Chemical Brothers and all types of people. And my focus was so narrow on hip hop. I wasn't even looking at the other room and being like, oh shit, Roger Sanchez is over there. You know? So when I met, and even when I met the Daft Punk guys themselves, when they did the Alive tour in 2007, Fama was like, yo, in 98, when we went to Miami with the Stardust white label, I remember you did a show with Rock Raider and all these other scratch DJs. And I was like, what the fuck? What? Because those guys, everybody, all the house heads, even the European ones, we tend to, I think from our perspective, we overlook this. All the house heads started off with hip hop.
I was just gonna say
And
that.
they were, you know what I mean? And they were playing hip hop when they were teenagers. Ask Boys Noise, he was scratching when he was 13, 14, And then I think from our North American perspectives, we look at some of those DJs like, oh man, they're killing it in the house and techno and this and that. But at first I didn't realize that we were all into the same shit in the 90s. And I was just a kid that was only focused on scratching. So I wasn't looking at that other room. But those house heads who were 10 years older than me, they were open-minded enough and they'd be like, oh shit, look, there's Rock Raider, there's Craze, there's A-Trak. So by the time I got sort of on the same scene as them, they were already up on what I was doing. And that was always a mind fuck for me.
That's so crazy.
It makes sense. Hip hop is such a gateway genre for
Hip-hop is a
DJs.
gateway.
And like
For sure.
and like crate
so
diggers,
much.
especially because you're like, when you start crate digging as a hip hop fan, you start with like samples, which kind of opens you up to older genres. So you're looking for
for
funk,
sure.
you're looking for boogie, you're looking for disco, and then
100%.
disco leads you into house because
exactly.
early house is essentially just fast hip hop. And the process is the same: a sample, a loop, and drums. To make it very simple. And everybody that I know from that era, that around our age group, ends up taking that path where they're like, yeah, I started as a hip hop guy and I still loved hip hop, but like when I got into samples is how I ended up getting into house.
For sure. 100%. Even like, last year I put out a track with Bob Sinclair and everybody knows him as like this big dance producer. And I've met him a little bit over the years, but it's really just in the last 2 years or so that we started talking more. And I remember like one of the times that we actually really did exchange a bunch of DMs was because I posted something about DJ Premier. And he was like, yo, I love Premier. And we start talking about all this shit. And it's like, again, I think a lot of North American, hip hop or open format DJs would be surprised to find out that Bob Sinclair will geek out about a Jerry the Damager record, but he will, and that leads, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Do you remember, I'm not sure how much you were going in and out of New York during that time, but the cabaret license and the no dancing ban and stuff like that?
Oh man. Well, man, I haven't thought about that in years, but that does ring a bell. Remind me, when was that?
It was something, I think like 2001, 2002, 2003. New York was like cracking down on these nightclubs and was basically like, you have to have a license for a cabaret to have people dancing.
Was it some Giuliani shit? Probably, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like in those years in the early 2000s is like when a lot of the mega clubs closed, and you know what I mean, like like I feel like Limelight and Exit and those really big clubs, like I believe they all sort of closed around then.
Around that time. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It seemed like a big ban just to kind of fold everything, and if they weren't getting paid, making money, blah blah blah, that they didn't want anything to do with nightclubs and all that. So
I moved to New York in 2006, but like I'm always asking Armand to tell me stories about like those, the Peter Gation years, and like just what that was like. And even earlier than that, even the, late 80s sort of pre-native tongue era of parties when house and hip hop was fully, commingling in the same clubs.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that moment when you guys met?
Yeah. Yeah, P-Thug from Chromeo met Armand before me, and he was sort of like, how come you guys don't know each other? You guys, what? Like, you guys it's the same. And he connected us. And I met him like, I want to say in the summer of 2006, or at some point in 2006, which is the year that I moved to New York myself. And yeah, it was funny. Like we didn't, it took a couple years before we actually made music together. I had to like get to know him, and at that point in time, he was just kind of Armand is he is the opposite of every DJ I've met in terms of like workload. Like he just kind of chills all day, and then once in a while he'll make a song, and that song is like Dizzy Rascal Bonkers. Like that's the record, and then he goes back to chill, and then he'll go make one record, and it's my. You're like, what the fuck? So I had to sort of get to know his rhythm before we made songs. But yeah, we met, and he had this big loft sort of apartment in Flatiron area in New York. And Armand had this like enormous TV and hard drives full of ripped music videos from a bunch of eras. And like his pastime and his way to bond with people, he still does that to this day, is he'll just play like rare videos that he found. Wow. And that's a way to just sort of start a conversation. And I remember that he played me, I forget who the artist is, he'll still remember, but he played me some 80s record where he was like, all right, let me see if you can guess who produced this record. I'll give you a hint. It's a drummer. And I guessed Phil Collins, and he gave me this look like, in Step Brothers when they're like, did we just become best friends? Like, it's one of those, like, oh, okay, we could talk about Phil Collins. All right, we're going, and we just kind of bonded over like all kinds of shit that is not house or not even really hip hop, like just yacht rock and Steve Miller Band and that era of music. And the other thing that was kind of going on is like, the sort of blog house thing was starting to pop off. And Armand is someone that's very attuned to like where things are going musically. And I think there was kind of a rift happening in the house scene, especially DJs of his generation, where like some of the older house heads were resisting change. And he was kind of the only one of his generation that was curious about the new shit. And I had just moved to New York, and I was befriending a lot of people in that scene. So I'd hit him up and be like, yo, let's go see Mastercraft. They're DJing at Studio B, or let's go see Switch. Let's go see, whoever, Treasure Fingers and Sinden and what have you. And he was just really into this sound. And like we were literally just sort of wingmen. Like we would just go out to clubs together. And, I was a little bit of a portal or a gateway into like this new scene for him. So he'd be, he was into whatever I would invite him to. And I was just like, shit, I'm hanging out with Armand Van Helden. This is kind of cool. And we just we got tight that way. Just kind of going out, goofing around. And then, like I mentioned, hanging out at his crib, me digging through his records, like what the hell? And him playing weird old music videos. And like, I remember sort of bringing up the possibility of music at one point. I was like putting together a lot of music, with Kid Sister around those times. I had just started Fool's Gold, and I was asking a few friends if they wanted to produce stuff for her album. And I remember asking him, and he's kind of like, I'm just chilling right now. And then I asked him for something else at some point, I think, and he gave me the same, like, I'm just chilling. And I didn't fully realize that, like, he really just only makes music once in a while. So I kind of left that there. And we were just, homies, and got really close as friends. And like, maybe 2 years later, one day he was like, hey, maybe we should make some tracks. And we made Anyway, and That Sauce was born.
You made Anyway first?
We made one. We did a batch of like 3 or 4 demos, and Anyway was part of that batch. And that was the keeper.
Did the other demos end up becoming anything?
I don't fully remember which were done in what order. I feel like the very first thing we tried we didn't keep, but a bunch of the other stuff we did. And like what ended up happening was, you know, he was still in the mindset of kind of the era when DJs would bring their new tracks to Winter Music Conference. So we would make songs from like, you know, let's say around December, January, February, we'd make a batch of a couple songs, you know, pick some, go to Miami in March and play them. And then it would take a little while to like, let's say we picked one as a single, then you have to clear the sample. It ends up coming out. If you look at like our first couple of years of releases, Anyway, Barbra Streisand, Big Bad Wolf, and all that, a lot of those songs came out around end of summer, early fall. And there was stuff that we were teasing in March in Miami. And then, you know, once that single will be out by the end of the year, we'd start making a new batch for the next year. So we just make a few songs here and there, and then mess around with like a lot of loop ideas. But for any Duck Sauce fans that would have heard the Duct Tape, which was a mix that we put out, I don't even remember what year, but like, you know, sort of around by the time we put a little before the album, before Quack. And it was like the first hour of a BBC Essential mix, but we also put it out as a mix, like a standalone mix. Duct Tape is really just like all our cutting room floor ideas from those first 3 or 4 years. Like just because, you know, we would just grab loops, put drums to it, set it aside, grab another loop, put drums to it, set it aside, you know, marinate on shit, pick out, you know, a couple keepers and produce those a little more. But we ended up having like just a stash of just loops and drums. And so that Duct Tape mix is just that. It's just unused ideas that we were amassing.
Oh man, that's driving me nuts because now I'm thinking of a song that I know I've seen you guys do live that I've never found just the song of, and it's driving me nuts. Like, now I can't.
I mean, there's some stuff where we couldn't clear samples. You know, there was a track called A Bug's Life that, you know, had this like sort of chipmunky ladybug vocal sample, and we couldn't clear that. So
it was the ladybug. Like, was it?
Yeah.
With the ladybug unlimited.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, we couldn't clear that.
Yeah, if you could just
I could share it, sure.
Yeah, share it in the email. I'd love to play that one out.
Who was the one who brought the final edition sample? Do you remember? Was it you or Armand?
Armand found all the samples. Like me making music with Armand for Duck Sauce is fun because it's like I go to a toy store basically. Like I go to his place, and he a lot of times would have set aside a couple of records, or maybe we'll dig together. But it would always be from his stash. There's literally only like 1 or 2 tracks we made that came where I brought the samples. Like 90+% of our tracks is Armand playing me shit, and then I'll go, let's do this one, and then this one, and this one, and then we make them together. Yeah,
so cool. At that time when you decided that you wanted to transition out of battling, what was that kind of catalyst that led you to full-time production?
Man, that happened slowly over years and years. Really years and years. And DJing itself was changing so much in those years. You know, so my last battles were in 2000. I didn't really get into production until a couple of years after that. You know, 2001 to 2003 were kind of the weird years for me because the whole battle scene kind of slowed down after 2000. You know, attendance at battles themselves was way down. And even just like what the DJs were doing, no shade to anyone, by the way, but like what was going on in those, as far as like who was coming up with tricks or whatever, like it felt like there was a bit of a rut in that scene for a few years. And a lot of my friends from the battle scene were kind of at an age where they were like, well, I'm just going to go get a job now, or maybe like just DJ at the local spot, but like, you know, sort of turn the simmer down in their pursuits of DJing. But I was 18 in 2000, and so I did my last battles, but then I was like, I was just still like, I'm not done, you know. If anything, I was sort of like, all right, well, where can I take this? Like I accrued, you know, all these tricks. I felt like I had a utility belt with a bunch of tricks I could do, and it's like, cool, let's play. Like where you know, where can I bring this? And I had to navigate the DJ scene a little bit. I also had to learn how to be a better mix DJ. You know, like I learned I was a world champion DJ, and didn't really know how to play a mix set at first of any kind, you know, so I had to cut my teeth and sharpen the darts for a while, and just kind of got out there and DJ'd. Messed around with production, I mean, a little bit. I mean, and yeah, if anything, in those years, I was kind of making like scratch songs, you know, the same way that like the
beats.
Pickles and D, yeah, just scratch beats, like
Yeah.
like a D Styles record or a Scratch Pickles record.
Right.
But and then I was like, I don't know, by like, you know, at that point, you know, Pro Tools became affordable. I had the little Pro Tools LE, like the Digio one or whatever at home, and then like messing around with samples. And I was, you know, over the years, started making beats that were just very sample based and like DJ Shadow-esque, if anything, Shadow RJD2, but also like maybe some Madlib influences or whatever else, you know, listening to RZA and Dilla, like all of us. But like that, I was making beats like that for a while, not really doing anything with them, you know, and the big shift that happened for me was like in the mid 2000s, what I was describing about like going to New York and meeting certain DJs and starting to play club music and faster shit. I remember there was a sort of point where I realized there was a disconnect where I was like, I'm playing all this 130 shit and I'm making records that sound like DJ Shadow, like slow moody shit.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of like, maybe I should make stuff that I could play.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's when I started messing around on the laptop and just teaching myself how to make, you know, club friendly records and edits. Started with edits and just, you know, there wasn't even like one DAW that did everything I wanted. So I had like an early version of Ableton, but I also had like Reason if I wanted to use like synths or like you know, drum machine plugin. So I would like rewire Reason into Ableton and you know, cut up audio in Ableton and do the MIDI shit in Reason. And yeah, I was just kind of making edits and made my first then I met, when I was starting to work with Kid Sister, I met Triple Exchange, who produced all the Spank Rock stuff, because he was producing some Kid Sister stuff too, and he showed me Logic, and that was the first time I saw a DAW where I could cut up audio the way that I was doing on Ableton, but also do MIDI and soft synths and plugins the way I was doing on Reason. So I was like, oh shit, I can do everything just in one program. So I got Logic. And that's when I made my first couple of remixes. And I used that for a couple of years. But by then I was like learning how to produce a little more in a sound similar to, I guess, what you would still know from me now, you know? But like, yeah, it's a transition that took years to navigate and even just to figure out, because there was no one else really in the scene that I could model myself after that came from where I came from and that was going where I was trying to go.
Right.
So I would grab bits of inspiration, like I like the way this DJ went from this to this, but the way this DJ went from that to that, or I'll try to like combine the paths and figure something out for myself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of DJs and DJ producers, mainly North American, that are like hip hop guys at Churned House. But I think you're right. I can't think of a single one that's like specifically battle DJ turn dance music DJ producer. I mean, there's plenty now, but I mean back then.
Yeah. No. I mean, if anything, you know,
like Roger kind of comes to mind. Armand, obviously, but they're not battle guys. They're just,
they weren't. Yeah, I mean, you know,
hip hop guys, house guys that you could tell are into hip hop.
Yeah, and you know, we shouldn't sleep on Jazzy Jeff's house,
of course,
pocket. Yes. And that's one of the reasons why Jeff's, you know, probably my biggest inspiration on a career level. But that was many years before me, and all the scenes, all the sub scenes even were different, you know, because I do remember that when I was starting to mess around with edits and I made the first Dirty South dance, that was just me like workshopping sounds and ideas and just trying to make stuff like what I felt like let's say when I was doing Dirty South Dance, I didn't know how to make tracks that sounded like that yet. So I would grab a track that's some sort of European distorted electro thing, and I would cut up, you know, a couple of other production elements on top and put a vocal from a rap a cappella. I was almost like is like a sketchbook of
Right,
what I
right.
wanted to make musically before I actually learned how to do it. And but it was kind of a leap because I didn't have an audience myself that was into that music yet. But I could tell that there was kind of a generational turnover. So there was like an older audience that knew me from battle shit. And I was touring with Unsaid Rapper, which exposed me to like really big audiences too. So there's people that knew that I was doing something worth noting in general, but I was still sketching out what the music part was going to look like. And I was befriending DJs that were playing the new shit that I was trying to make, but they weren't coming from, like you said, like the battle scene the way that I was. And I did have to take a leap of faith for a good year or two and just be like, I'm going to play the music I feel like playing. And there's a scene that is new and exciting that I want to infiltrate. And at some point I'm going to have to marry the two, but like, let me just go out and try this.
Right.
And luckily it worked, you know, and I started playing, but part of it was me going up to promoters that were doing, you know, going up to someone like Roxy Cottontail in New York and be like, yo, can I play at Sway? And she always tells this story. Like I literally went up to her, like, you know, can I play your parties? And she was like, I just saw you play at the Garden with so-and-so last week. Like I can't afford your fee. And I was like, pay me whatever you pay your other DJs. And she's like, I got like a couple $100. Sure. I just want to play your party. They're cool. You know, and I started doing that and playing the new shit that I liked, you know, and kind of building a new base, you know, and not overthinking like, well, what are the nonfiction fans gonna think? You know, because a few years prior, I was just hanging. You know, you know what I mean? Like, what's the arsonist fans gonna think? Not overthinking that too much, and just going for something that felt. And by the way, I'm using nonfiction as an example, but I just remembered the homie Eclipse, who's nonfiction's DJ, would come and see my new gigs. I remember if I was playing at the Rub and playing some new shit. And he would text me like, yo, I saw your name on a flyer. Can you put me on the list? And he would come to Southpaw and watch what I was doing there and be like, yo, this is cool. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Like there is a way to, you know, connect the shit.
Did you feel any pushback from the dance community at first?
No, not at all. Like I don't know. I feel like it's funny. Like there's a couple points in my career where I feel like I jumped into certain scenes in a period where they were reshaping themselves anyways. And I was able to sort of ride a certain wave because turntablism was like that too. You know, like my first battles weren't like the DMC that I won was my first battle ever. Like I entered the Montreal battle, won that took me to the Canadian finals, that took me to the Worlds. And then next thing you know, I'm 97 world champ. But in 96, 97, the whole turntablist game was changing. Every DJ was trying to figure out the flare and the crab and all these crazy scratches that were coming out. And so it's almost like it wasn't even any time for anyone to be like, what's this guy doing here? You know? And there was a similar thing with that blog era of electro and house and everything. You know, I think that a couple, you know, I imagine that the DJs from that scene when I jumped in were sort of like, oh cool, he's into what we're into. And that was it, you know?
It really bridged the gap, you know, and you know, these mixtapes where you're putting like Claude Von Stroke and All the Way Turned Up and stuff like that. People on either side of the table, they don't know what the fuck the other is. So they're like,
no,
who? Like Claude who? You're like, you know, like,
I remember putting a Pimp C a cappella over an Errol Alkin track and sending it to Errol Alkin and him being like, I don't know who this guy is, but it sounds like, I don't know who this vocalist is, but this sounds really cool. Thanks. It's like this, I don't know, sounds cool. I like it. You know?
Yeah. It's just such a wild time to look back on that. Yeah. You know, and it feels like when Spank Rock and Yo 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 came out that all eyes were on, okay, something different. It's like, okay, these are kind of like, it's like chiptune sound. It's like, it sounds like video games. It sounds like just off the wall. And it was before that, it was just, okay, we have the Strokes, we have Block Party, you know, it's just like indie. It's like, there's more.
Yeah, and if anything, there was also like Electro Clash, like it was like Fisher Spooner and DJ Hell and all that, and that shit is super cool too. But it was when what we now call Blockhouse, I think what happened in those years is like there was less rules, and there was a lot of new records that were being made that just sounded very raw and unfinished. And in fact, I think a lot of it was like people from bands making electronic music, you know, because Soulwax was a live band, and then when they started making remixes, I think they approached it as, you know, and Simeon Mobile Disco was like the side project of Simeon. If you listen to a Simeon record now, it's like, oh shit, this is like Britpop or something. Like, it was, Simeon as a band was completely different. I mean, there's a couple other, I mean, Mastercraft, you know, Jesse was in Fast From Above before studying Mastercraft. So, you know, it was dudes from bands who knew how to use synths and you know, were in a scene, this sort of, you know, sweaty, you know, indie scene where kids just wanted to jump, and then they started making tracks on the side that had harder drums or whatever. And you know, that's what we got out of it. I mean, yeah, it's Bloody Beetroot, similar thing, right?
For sure.
Yeah, it was all dudes from bands.
What do you think was the death of Bloghouse, if you had to like pinpoint something?
I think you know, when dance music broke on a bigger commercial level in North America, there was like this sort of like double assault that happened around like 2011 or so, when on one hand you had, you know, David Guetta, Akon, you know, Sexy Bitch kind of records, Big Calvin records, Swedish House Mafia. And by the way, I'm not knocking any of this. Like, those are all huge, amazing records. But, you know, with much more sheen, much more gloss to them. So these big, you know, chart-friendly records that broke on one side, and then like dubstep at the same time was huge, like the sort of Rusko, Caspa era of dubstep. You know, I think those two really strong, I don't know, poles or magnets took the scene to a different place than, you know, New Young Pony Club or the Claxons or whatever. You know, that was just, it just went burp in either of those two directions. But also, like, you know, that's when EDM as a word and as a concept broke. And I think even on a sort of infrastructure level, everything got like a lot more bigger and robust, and there wasn't really that sort of like experimental playground anymore to just like make weird tracks that don't even sound right and just throw them on blog. Like, it was just like, now it was big shit.
That Dirty Dutch stuff kind of took over right at the tail end. Do you guys think this kind of a question for the floor? Do you think the song that kind of signaled the beginning of the end of Bloghouse or Electro was Heartbreaker, the Mastercraft song?
I don't know. I agree that song straddles. Like, that song is kind of Bloghousey, but it's also, it has the clean sound.
A little too clean,
It does straddle it. I don't want to like.
I don't want to put Mastercraft as like, hey, you killed it. But...
exactly.
Yeah,
but I see where you're going. That it straddles the sounds of.
I think like that's the song for me, at least. That's like when you see the change going. Like, it has John Legend on it, who at the time is like now a superstar.
Yeah,
and Mastercraft, who's like kind of the captains of this whole scene.
Yeah.
It was still on the blogs too. Like, that
still on the blogs.
Blog, you know,
still getting played in warehouses, but like still at excess.
It became like cool dude music, you know, where people were like, you know, there was like, oh, you know, we listen to EDM. You know, it doesn't have that no cover, 2 PBRs, like that kind of that kind of thing anymore, you know.
I mean, I remember when I got my first residency at XS, and like everything was changing. And at that point in time, it was like
you played at Tris first.
I think my contract was like with,
it was Win Nightlife.
Yeah, so it was like all 3 clubs or whatever, like XS and Surrender and Trist.
I busted Trist, that's why.
Okay. I had just changed management too. Like, I don't know if people really realize how much of a shock and a change all this was behind the scenes, or even just for some of us as DJs to figure out our own business and how to navigate a new business, you know, like, just as a side note, I didn't have a manager before 2007. Like the first 10 plus years of my career, I didn't need a manager. Like I was just in a pretty small scene where everything was kind of an ecosystem, and I had an agent, you know, and then I had another agent. And when I needed a lawyer to look at a contract, then I hired a lawyer. But I hired a manager in 2007 because I was really interested in that, you know, in that scene that we now call Bloghouse. And I was, you know, getting asked to do remixes, and Nike asked me to make like a 45-minute piece of music for Nike Plus running. And I'd never produced anywhere close to 45 minutes of anything. I was terrified. And I hired a British manager who actually worked with Timmy Mobile Disco and a few other people. And because there was no one in North America that even really understood this scene yet. And I worked with this guy for like 3 years. And by 2010 2010 or so, things were like the dams were starting to break in North America, and shit was starting to break fast. And I was starting to get asked to, like, more brands were coming at me for like sponsorship type stuff. And like even the demand for shows was getting bigger here. And you know, Duck Sauce anyway was almost a hit, and then Barbara came out, and it was like, what the fuck is happening? Everything was just like this big shock to the system. And right after that, I changed managers because I was just like, my British guy doesn't really see what's happening here in New York and in North America. Shit is really changing fast, and it's becoming a business, and I need someone who is on the ground here. And I still couldn't really find someone that like really understood like my world of DJing. People who were from my era of hip hop didn't even see what was starting to happen with electronic music. People on the electronic side maybe didn't fully get where I was coming from. And for a year, I worked with this guy who was mostly Tiesto's manager for North America at the time. And I was sort of like, hey, this guy says that he gets what I'm about, and he's in big DJ business with Tiesto, and you know, his company thinks that they can help me build up my business with their know-how and their infrastructure, but sort of my way. And he helped me get a residency at the Win. And at that point in time, I'm pretty sure there was only 6 DJs who had residencies at the Win. And I really remember that the Win refused to advertise DJs. That's changed so much, obviously.
Wow.
But when it was just like me, Afrojack, Aoki,
Calvin.
I forget who. I don't think Calvin was even there yet. I'm not sure. But like, I want to say in 2011, it was like, I just remember that there was 6 DJs that had contracts
It was a very
with the
small
Win.
crew, yeah.
I was one of them. And the message from the managers and the agents was always like, Steve Wynn doesn't want to advertise anyone's face on the billboard. That didn't last long, but I was there.
But that was a thing, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then, you know, fast forward a year or two later, and it's just like everybody's face on even in LA on Sunset Boulevard. But everything was changing fast. And I tried working with this guy who also worked with Tiesto. And I mean, you know, the Win thing is one example. There's a few business things and a few sort of like raw moves that he helped me do. But culturally, there was a big disconnect. And there's a lot of things that I thought that whatever my radar of what's cool and what's not cool, and which magazine I want to work with and which one I don't, and like just the way I want to navigate the scene, which is so important to me. It was too much of an effort to communicate that with that team. And I was exhausted after a year, but I'm not blaming this manager, even just in general, like just the fact everything was changing so fast. I don't know if that, I feel like that's the kind of thing that like history sort of like washes away. We were just trying to figure shit out, and we didn't know what we were doing. We literally didn't know what we were doing. And we're just like, whoa, what? Now this company wants to do business with us, or should I do a remix for this person, that person? I don't know. I don't have time. I don't even know how to produce. What? And like, it just felt like that nonstop. And
I don't know how to make a song. 45 minutes.
Yeah. Dude, I had a burnout trying to make that record, you know? And like, I still, by the way, in the middle of all that, I still have this email. David Guetta reached out to me. We didn't know each other. And he got my contact from Busy P, just on some like France shit. And he's like, hey, my name is David Guetta or something. And he's like, I got your contact from Pedro Winter from Headbanger. I like your remixes. Here's a demo of something that I'm doing with the Black Eyed Peas. They're changing their sound for their new album. And he was like, it's really important to me that they like not skip the underground in a sense, because this is going to be a big pop record, but I want some cool remixes too. Would you remix this? And he sent me just the hook of I Got a Feeling, which I remember listening to it and being like, this is The Love Is Gone. Like, right? Like, because it's the same chords, right?
Yeah.
And I was like freaking out trying to.
Yeah, right.
Like, they even say, like, I was listening to, I think Taboo was on the Questlove podcast just recently. And he basically said that I Got a Feeling was essentially a remix to get The Love Is Gone. It took that same guitar and made a new song on it. So I remember being like, isn't this that other Guetta record? And I was really late on one or two remixes. I want to say like one of them was a Digitalism remix, which really didn't do much for my career. But I was just like, my remixes in those years, like, the Boys Noise remix, the Sebastian Taylor remix, all that stuff. Like I was so late for all of them because I really didn't know how to produce proper. I just had like ideas and things I wanted to hear. And I would just noodle around for weeks and weeks and deliver one thing late and then already be late for the next thing because I was late on the one right before. And like in the midst of one of those freakouts, I got that email from Guetta and I was just like, I can't do this. And I don't know what. This is another Guetta song.
I just put out Heads Will Roll.
So I skipped on remixing or even being involved with I Got a Feeling, which of course would have been a great business move for me. But like at the time I was like, what?
That's so funny. Like just to be like consistently late on these really obscure like indie records. Like, they're not obscure to us because obviously we're heads, but like
and skipping out on working with Get and Black Eyed Peas. And we're like being asked to remix Gaga Let's Dance, and I was like, who's Lady Gaga? What kind of name is that? And like going to her MySpace page and being like, I don't know, I feel like she's this is not really my
corny
thing. And then or not corny, but just like, I guess the majors are starting to do some shit that sounds like what they're playing at CineSpace. Let me just go and remix, like, I don't know. So
did you have a battle ever, like, in it, because you mentioned earlier like the kind of like cultural disconnect between you and this previous band. Did you ever feel like, oh man, like I'm getting into this shit, but I don't want to fuck with like that, like I want to fuck with these people over here? Like,
for sure, I say no way more than I say yes. Like, and that's been a very important thing in just guiding, kind of making my own path and guiding where I want to go. Is just like, turning down a ton of shit. Also, because I work slow, so I can't say yes to everything.
Is that still the case? Do you still feel like you work slow? Not like, not like in an offensive way, but like
no,
you take your time, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, for sure. And like I'm always gonna be a DJ first and a producer second. And it's I'll probably never get to a point as a producer where where I could just like knock out a remix in a day or even 2 days or whatever. Like it just I still just noodle. It's just that with time I've built a couple tools or a couple things that but I still hit roadblocks and I'll be like, all right, let me set this aside. And then maybe I'll just film a scratching video for the gram or whatever, do something else with my day, come back to it the next day. Oh shit, this bass line's wrong. Fix it a little bit, set it aside, go on Beatport, buy records, or do a Fool's Gold conference call, whatever. That's still how I work, is like little increments of shit. It's not very efficient, but that's just
the
how
job gets done.
Yeah. And then like when it feels done, then it's done. But it's still, I've had to like, even just structure the way that I accept jobs and deadlines and remixes and whatever else, with the fact that I'm just not the guy that will knock something out in an afternoon. That's not me.
I mean, we waited years for a Justice album, and we're still as excited when it came out. It's like fucking new Justice.
As long as the end product's good, I don't give a shit how long.
Exactly.
I prefer it that way. Artists, producers, DJs to take their time and come out with something good rather than.
I mean, I'm still waiting for this Usher album, so
yeah.
Hang up them roller skates for a second, man. Just
let him know. Hey, you're like, yo, chill out, bro.
Just chill, man. He's too
focus.
nice on the roller skates right now.
But speaking of battles,
yeah, what we do around here every week, we compare two artists head to head. And we're definitely going to talk about the records right after this. I want to get into this real quick. Sure. We compare two artists head to head, their top 5 songs as viewed most popular on Spotify.
Okay.
This week, I picked the battle. I'm curious to see what you think. We're going to go 5 rounds here. Mm-hmm. This week's battle is Duck Sauce versus Chromeo.
I love
it. so okay. We're going to start off with round 1. Duck Sauce, Ask Me, or Chromeo, Checklist, the new one with Max.
And I have to pick something?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay, I mean, just for that one, I'll pick Duck Sauce just because Checklist is more of a feature.
Okay.
That the guys did. So for that one, I'll pick the Duck.
Okay. I'm just gonna throw these all at A-Trak rapid fire here. Round 2, Barbra Streisand or Jealous?
Ah, man. Is there like a Drink Champs-esque? Can I drink some water?
Yeah.
Oh man, I would love to give you a different treatment, but you gotta pick.
Massive versus Massive, yeah.
Yeah, those two, I don't know, man. One, Barbra Streisand changed my life, and Jealous changed my brother's life.
Yeah.
And we both work so closely that it really both changed both of our lives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My Barbara plaques are right there. Humble brag.
Yeah.
Oh, this whole thing.
Yeah.
So sick.
Just a total dunk. Yeah. Just like, boom.
Over here. So rad. The fucking.
Fuck, man. I mean, okay. I just mental note that I'm gonna pick a bunch of Chromeo after this, but I gotta go with Barbara here because that's my heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with Anyway or Right Back Home to You.
Oh, okay. So let's go to Right Back Home to You. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nonchalant or Fancy Footwork?
Fancy Footwork. I'll give that to Chromeo. Also, like, truly, Fancy Footwork changed the path of Chromeo completely. Like that song just like took off. Like that.
Still the fucking
went
coolest,
from, like,
man.
Yeah.
It's
the fucking coolest still.
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't sound like anything else.
It doesn't.
Let's go Captain Duck or Everyone Moves to LA, which you're also on.
Interesting. Right. Yeah, which I'm also on. I'm partial to, I'll say Everyone Moves to LA, maybe just because it's fresher to me, so I still have that enthusiasm for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is going to be a lightning round. You pick one, and the other one gets deleted out of your Serato, out of your iTunes, out of everything.
Out of existence.
Out of existence.
The stakes are high, dog. They don't exist.
Out of everything. Starting with White Stripes or UGK. Who are you keeping?
I got to keep UGK.
Okay. Hypnotize Minds or Swish a House?
Fuck. I mean... Tough, but I'll go with Hypnotize Minds.
Okay, let's go with Faith Evans or Mary J. Blige.
Mary J. Keeping Mary J.
Beat Nuts or Alcoholics?
I'm a little partial to the Nuts. Okay. I love both of them, and I love that they've become, like, over time we sort of compare them, but yeah, I'm a little partial to the Nuts.
Okay. LCD or the Strokes?
I'm gonna ride with the Strokes on this one.
Okay. Fleetwood Mac or Tom Petty?
That's tough, but I'll ride with Fleetwood Mac on this one.
Okay. Dilla or Pete Rock?
That's impossible. That's evil. You are evil.
Yeah.
So the rule is if you don't pick one, they both go
Yeah.
away forever.
Yeah.
You know what? Just to sleep better at night, I have a way to rationalize this. That Dilla is a son of Pete Rock, so Pete Rock exists in Dilla.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pick Dilla because he embodies both of them.
Good.
Good one. I like that.
That's the best answer we've
That
ever
is.
had for
It
that.
really is.
Yeah.
People have
Steely
opted
Dan-
to just erase them both.
Yeah.
yeah, which is just horrible.
We can't have either.
I will say this: listen to Pete Rock's remix for Monica. The song is I think it's Before You Walk Out My Life or something like that.
Yeah.
It's before Dilla was on the scene, and it's a Dilla bass line. It's crazy. Like it shows you where Dilla got that his style of bass line.
Very
Before
cool.
you walk out.
That's dope.
I love
This
that
is
song, too.
it's gonna get a little bit tougher here. Steely Dan or Gangstar?
Why? Gangstar. I'm keeping Gangstar.
Okay.
I'm keeping Gangstar.
What we said too when
That's just mean, though. That's just mean.
Roots or NERD?
Oh, Roots. And no shade, I love NERD, but the
Sure.
Roots are like so foundational to me.
Okay. Kendrick Lamar or Kenny Loggins?
We'll keep Kendrick.
Okay.
I do love me some Kenny Loggins, but I gotta ride with hip hop.
I figured since the yacht rock, we should probably touch on that.
Yeah.
Let's go with
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay, let's go with Michael Jackson or Prince.
Prince. I'm keeping
Okay.
Prince. Yeah,
Beatles or Beach Boys?
I'm a Beatles guy.
Okay.
Yeah. If you
Missy
said
or
Stones or
Busta?
Beatles, I'd say Stones, but yeah. Oh, Missy or Busta?
Uh-huh.
Missy. I love them both, but Missy.
Tupac or Biggie?
Big.
Okay. Mariah or Whitney?
I'll say Whitney. That's a tough one,
And
but I'll say Whitney.
last for the lightning round, Outkast or Hall & Oates?
I gotta just ride for hip hop. I'll say Outkast.
Okay.
Oh,
cool.
you forgot Armand Van Helden or Fatboy Slim.
Come on. Especially in the premise of like he would disappear. No, Armand. Come on, man.
Same.
My guy right here. Come on, this guy. Come on.
Same.
Yeah.
That's so
perfect
funny.
segue. Now we
Perfect
can
segue.
talk about records.
Let's talk
Yes.
fucking wax.
talk.
yo.
Let's talk wax.
Okay.
The record room looks majestic.
It
I know
does.
we were going to do
you.
the podcast a couple of months ago, and things got moved around because the record room was being built.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
your first record? Do you remember?
So
Yeah.
so there's a couple things. And I have all of these within arm's reach. There's a couple records like, my dad had records, like a few, right? So, I was scratching his stuff at first. And then, my brother and I started going to record shops and we would buy a couple things together, where I'm not even sure what's the first thing that he and I bought. But I do remember the first time that I went to the store by myself when I was like 12 or 13. And I bought Smith & Wesson The Shining, the LP, and the single for Pete Rock and CL Smooth, I'll Take You There, that had an acapella so I could scratch some words. So those two, that was my first purchase solo at a record shop. But to rewind a little bit, when I was just like amassing a few records, the first record that I messed around and scratched on, my brother's best friend knew that I was like interested in scratching and gave me the red 7-inch for Beastie Boys' Sure Shot.
Mm.
And I was messing around with scratching on my dad's stereo. So I had like his belt drive turntable. And of course we didn't have a mixer at home, but we had an amp like under the turntable. And there was some sort of switch that would cut the sound on and off. Maybe it was a phono line switch or like phono aux switch or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was under. So I was scratching like this. I had like the little aux switch here. And the turntable being a belt drive, 12 inches were too heavy. It would slow down the platter. So this little, I have it right there. This little Beasties Sure Shot 7-inch that had the small hole was the only record that I could really get to scratch, you know, on this belt drive turntable. It was light enough that it would slow down the whole platter. It wouldn't slow down the platter. And because it had the small hole, it was okay for scratching. And I would, you know, pick out little moments that sounded cool, you know, when I scratched. Like there was a couple remixes of Sure Shot. And there was one where I think Mike D said, like my man Yak, will I use a fork? And never, ever, ever am I eating fucking pork. When you can't, you won't, and you don't stop. And like the way that he said like fork and pork, like I had like a little attack to those words. And I was scratching on that, not because of what the word was, but just the sonics of it. I was like, oh, this sounds like the scratches that I hear on records. And I was just messing around with these little a cappella moments. Yeah.
That's so wild, bro. And then you won DMC.
But it was literally like whatever I could get my hands on. Hold on, let me grab this record.
Yeah, please.
Shot thing. I know
That's
I have
so
it right
sick.
So sick. Yeah.
Dad's like, what the fuck are you doing in there? Don't worry about it, dog. It's gonna make us rich.
This record.
So dope.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
oh, fire. He
man.
gave you with the cover and everything.
Yep. So
There it is.
that was the first thing that I scratched.
Fucking
Or
wild.
you know, I remember like grabbing my dad's copy of Songs in the Key of Life and you know, just figuring out that if you scratch the snare drum, it had a little attack that sounded like my thing was like I'm trying to figure out how to do that thing that I hear on songs.
Right.
You know? And so I was, you know, messing around with my dad's records. And then like I said, my brother and I would go to record shops and like buy a couple things. Like we bought a sort of break record that had drum beats and I was scratching on those snares too, because snares just somehow sounded good when I scratched them. And then his best friend gave me the Sure Shot joint. I was like, oh, there's words on here, you know?
What put you on hip hop?
Just hanging around with my brother and like listening to whatever, you know, just being the younger brother, like whatever him and his groups, his friend group, his, you know, whatever him and his friends from school were listening to, you know, the path was, you know, before that, we were all just listening to like classic rock, like Hendrix and Zeppelin kind of stuff, you know, and Dave was like learning how to play the guitar, which obviously he still does. So, but yeah, listening to like Hendrix, Frank Zappa, Pink Floyd, and even like King Crimson kind of shit, like stuff that was a little more proggy. And then I really got into the Chili Peppers around like Mother's Milk and well, no, really with Blood Sugar Sex Magic, but I remember buying Mother's Milk because I liked Blood Sugar Sex Magic. So that's 92. And like it went from that to seeing the video for So What You Want on TV and being like, what is that? And the Beasties and Cypress Hill were the way that I got from, you know, Chili Peppers-esque rock to hip hop. It goes Beastie, Cypress Hill, and then it's like, oh, the Far Side, oh, De La Balloon Mind State. Like it went into that.
I see that right
when I was
behind
like
you
12
on the
or
left
so.
side. Yeah, the you
Balloon,
have such
yeah.
an interesting collection out, and it's just like it's so many records. Are these all records that really inspired you that you pick, or just things?
Oh, what the ones that are out?
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, just yeah. So I just had these shelves built because the records were in storage for a long time. So it goes like that.
So awesome.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then like I was just kind of, you know, looking at references with the homie that built the shelves, and there was one picture that we saw where there was like this display row, and we chose to do that, and
it came out fresh.
It's so
Thanks.
dope. Yeah.
Neek, does that make you jealous?
Absolutely. Are
Just
you
a
kidding
little.
me? I want a display shelf. Oh, there's lights.
Oh,
Yeah, there's lights.
oh, that's sick.
Dude,
That's
yeah.
So,
fire.
and then on this side is, you know, the turntables, and then I have
With the
these
little phono, the
Yeah.
I
satellite
have
speaker.
the Grundig
Oh, yeah.
speakers.
Very
So
mid-century.
yeah, so what I put on, you know, I kind of rotate what's out on that shelf, but it's just kind of, you know, I'm just kind of picking out things that have, you know, that mean a lot to me. The biz, I mean, it's funny thinking back at like how I got into Biz Markie Records, like Pete Rock, the Main Ingredient album by Pete Rock and CL Smooth was one of those first cassettes that Dave and I, you know, sort of passed around from his friend group to us, and we were listening to all the time at you know, on our little Walkman or whatever. And if you listen to The Main Ingredient, Pete Rock is scratching on Biz Markie Records on practically every song, especially if you count just rhyming with Biz and Kane. There's a lot, you know, there's a bunch of Kane words, but it was all these Biz Markie records, literally like on more than half the songs. So that just kind of like set me down a path of like, who's that? I should know, you know, this person's records. And I used to bug the hell out of the local record shop in Montreal and ask them to order that compilation, Biz as Bad as Beats, which I had a hard time saying with my French Canadian accent at the age of 12. And I would just call them and be like, did you receive a Biz as Bad as Beats? And they finally got it. And I remember listening to them and being to those songs and being like, this guy made a song called Picking Boogers. So like that's my kind of guy. And just like really being enamored with Biz, but it's because of Pete Rock scratches that I was curious about what, you know, who this guy was. So that compilation was really important to me. And of course, then I had a routine with Nobody Beats the Biz that I used in my winning DMC set. And yeah, so that, you know, that was an important connection to me. But then it's just other shit that I have out. I mean, the Malcolm McLaren shit, of course. And,
Very cool.
you know,
Yeah.
even with the artwork itself,
Right.
Armand, and, you know, this is where the Awe and Fresh sample is from. Change the beat, you know. I just always love this Just Ice cover. I don't know if you guys could see.
Yeah.
Hitme Digital, you know, that's Stuart Price, like that's one of my favorite albums. You know, over here, I mean, Kazi, one of my favorite Madlib beats. I mean, the Gravedigger shit is great. Balloon Mind State, of course, Wild Style, of course, and then on this side, what's that?
I said Wild Style's the illest. The Fat Pipe Buddy beats, so sick.
Yeah, crazy. And then this compilation, Strength Magazine presents Subtext. That's something that Peanut Butter Wolf A&R'd and got me to do like a scratch song on this comp, and it was the first time that any music of mine was like on a record.
Oh, that's
sick.
And it's wild to listen to it now. Like there's all these like Madlib interludes. Like just signed Madlib to Stone's Throw. So yeah, that's the first time that I had a song.
What year was that?
98, I think. I mean, it's a trip. Let's look at that track listing because I know there's
probably some names on there that we'd be like, "Whoa, what?"
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Yeah, well, by the time it came out, it was 99, but he put it together in 98, and I gave them my like school yearbook picture for
the fire.
And then the track list: AC Alone, Loot Pack, Dell, Peanut Butter Wolf with DJ Design, Dilated Peoples, Divine Styler, My Song, Rasco and Planet Asia, Rob Swift, Cutmaster Kurt, AWOL 1 and Abstract Rudes, J-Rock and Babu. Yeah, and there was I remember that he put all these skits in between that were just little Madlib beats. So yeah.
The coolest. So your record collection was in storage for 16 years, you said.
Yeah, most of it. Well, so what happened is you know, I grew up in Montreal. I was up in Montreal when I started DJing and started buying records around 95 or so. And you know, was buying like, all of this is hip hop, like more, maybe half of what I have is hip hop shit, because that's all I was playing, like we were saying earlier in the conversation. But also got into digging a little bit, and my brother was making beats. Like before Chromeo, my brother was making hip hop beats. Even I mentioned Nonfiction earlier. He had, he produced one of the songs on that album, The Future Is Now. Like that was like our scene. So Dave was making beats, so he was buying samples, and then I was, buying breaks and all the Ultimate Breaks and Beats and Strictly Drums and all that kind of shit, and then hip hop stuff, of course, and like a bunch of bootlegs. And when I moved to New York in 2006, I kind of moved on a whim. Wasn't even sure if I was moving or just like going to New York. And at one point, I came back up to Montreal and just put my records in storage. I was like, I can't fit this in my New York apartment. Like, let me just put this in boxes. I'll come back for it. And that's, it's only last year that I got those records back, because it's from that point on, everything just moved really fast. Like 2006 is when, I was on tour a lot. I was starting to produce. I started Fool's Gold at the end of that year with Nick and the guys, and yeah, everything just moved really fast. So, and I was bouncing around New York apartments, none of which had room for a couple thousand records. I didn't even have that many per se, but like,
not a chance.
No.
And then no, and what New York's like, and then and of course I continued to buy records since then, but I was buying a little bit less because Serato was already out, so I didn't have to have every record anymore. I was only buying stuff that I wanted to have. So maybe I'd go digging because I was starting to produce more, so maybe I needed samples. And then I was aware that like somewhere in the world I had a record collection, and I didn't like the idea that like the collection would stop at a certain year. So at least like records that were important to me that I really liked, I would buy them for the, for the collection wherever it was, and kind of keep them in New York. And I was still part of a record pool for a little bit, so I would receive boxes of shit. So I had like a ton of, like when you have like 8 copies of a Lloyd Banks record. Cool was sending it every month. There was I had like, I don't know if you guys remember how many times Asylum sent out Laffy Taffy before that blew up, but like that's probably the record that I had like 12 copies of. And finally it blew up, and I was like, like I like the song, but I don't think I'm gonna keep all of these. So yeah, there's there's more records that I Like, that's literally
that's
the
why
one
Amoeba stocked. It's all A-Trak's records that are just like in the singles dollar bin. Yeah, dude.
But so that's kind of what happened. Is I had like a certain amount of records from the first 10 or 11 years, my Montreal years, in storage, and then I bought more stuff since. And during the pandemic, I was just sitting at home, and I was like, I need to get my records back from Montreal. And then it took a while to even like figure that out, like fucking hiring a, trucking company and getting shit across the border and all, getting the shelves built. And then that was delayed and but here we are.
And then trying to figure out how many you have to how much shelving you probably need, I'm sure.
And that was kind of that I eyeballed that, and luckily it was pretty close. I mean, my studio is the next room over there, and there's like a couple more shelves there. In the actual studio, like especially like break records and shit like that, but it was close enough where I was like, phew.
So you got really, I think I want to say in the last 2 years maybe, you've been like jamming hard on the SP1200.
And
has the records coming to your home kind of correlated to that infatuation of just using that machine a lot and kind of the analog sampling process?
Not directly. I mean, maybe in general, I was in a mindset of like connecting to a certain feeling, but not directly. It's not like, in fact, like 10 Seconds Volume 1 and 2, those 2 EPs were done before the record collection got back here. But it did come from just, downtime in the pandemic, having this drum machine that I had bought 10 plus years prior that was just like in bubble wrap in my basement, needing to be fixed, and just being like, let me get this fucking thing fixed once and for all. Learning how to use it. Yeah, just learning how to use it and figuring out, what I was going to do with it.
Is there a full album coming from the SP1200?
There's like I'm finishing 2 more EPs now. So I think it's just going to be EPs. Yeah,
So-
it seems to work in that format. So yeah,
Yes,
more
I like
EPs.
that.
Yeah.
And probably like, you know, what I would like to do also is just to like even have other SP 1200 producers do some of the volumes of 10 seconds on Fool's Gold and just have it be a series that's just all made on that drum machine where I'm kind of carrying it at first, but it could, I can open it up.
So
Fire.
cool.
That's
So
so
cool.
sick.
Thanks.
With Goldie Awards and your
Yeah.
creation of that, did you start to utilize more equipment in your sets? Did that have any effect?
Um, hmm. I mean, I think what happened was in the bigger picture is like in the last 5, 6 years, I think there's a lot of new DJ equipment that started coming out that just opened up new possibilities
Right.
for turntablists in general. Like ever since the S9, it was like, oh shit, we got pads right here. Now, like literally, my fingers can be like some fingers on the record, some on the pads, and mix, effects on the mixer with scratches inside in the same pattern. Like it just opened up a lot of possibilities. So I started coming up with like new types of routines myself, and Goldie Awards was kind of an effort to like reconnect a couple parts of the scene that just felt like they had like um grown apart, and I just saw an opening of what seemed like a way to refresh, you know, the battle scene and the types of routines that people were making, and just openly wanting to allow contestants, DJs, producers to use whatever equipment they want.
Right.
It just felt like the new equipment was going to catalyze a whole new type of inspiration and creativity. And I think that that pace of new equipment, bringing new possibilities, at a steady stream in the last couple of years, that's still going on because I think it went from mixers like the S9 to phase to now like stem separation, and other shit too, and Serato and Tractor and a lot of and Record Box, also working with more and more controllers and pads, people using like um machine type stuff with their routines, so um yeah, I just think that it opened up, like it felt like turntablism was a little bit stuck for a while, and there was a way to merge like finger drumming and live production with turntablism. So I tried to use Goldie Awards as a way to put fuel in the scene, and also encourage a lot of those younger DJs, like just on the gram, seeing DJs who are like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, cutting it up, doing routines, being like, cool, come and enter this battle, and like let's put you toe to toe next to someone twice your age, because that's what I did in '97.
Yeah.
The DJs who placed second and third were twice my age.
Yeah.
So some of that too, and then but within that same span of 5, 6 years, I was able to do the Rain mixer myself, the Rain 70 A-Trak edition, and also being stuck at home during the pando, I had like the Roland TR8S that was just like in a box in a corner of my studio, like unopened. And I was like, let me open this up, see how it works. And then being like, oh shit, the sync on this can talk to the sync in Serato. Like they can just sync up with USB, and realizing that I could like make beats on the TR8S and like loop up some shit on my turntables and have it all locked together. So I was like filming videos of that during the pandemic.
Very cool stuff.
Thanks. And between that and then what I started doing with the SP 1200, it put me in a mindset of like wanting to build a new live show, which is something I plan on doing more towards the end of the year. We'll see how long it takes me, but like I'm gonna create a new show that's not just DJing. That's really me with my drum machines and one or two turntables, but like a whole bunch of, gadgets. Like I just turned on a SP404 last weekend for the first time and was like, oh, cool. I could learn how to use this and like combine this with the TR-8S and the SP1200 and maybe some effects pedals and some cuts and just make some shit.
Would it be similar to like the Zane Lowe showcase you did with the SP12?
Yeah, but
like a full
stretched
set.
out long. Yeah, for sure. And
that would be so fucking tight.
Yeah. I saw that a lot at Coachella this year. A lot of drum machines on stage this year. More than anything.
It's cool to see more people using like live production.
Yeah.
Like instead of
and the thing is like in like 2004, 5, 6, I was using loop pedals in my sets. But once I went in a direction with my DJing that was more electro and high energy, I had to sort of let go of some of the experimental shit that I was doing. But I've been wanting to bring back the loop pedals, so I think the new setup is even going to have some of that too. Just do some live looping and, combining with the drum machine stuff.
It's a very cool middle ground of like digital and analog, where it's like, it's still very analog in comparison to like, Serato,
right?
Like digital DJing the way it is today versus drum machines, tape loops or whatever, stuff like that.
I wanna speak a little bit on a couple albums. I first want to talk to you about what it was like getting in the studio with Cam'ron and creating that whole project. Because that's the coolest shit to me.
Yeah.
Like any fan of like Dipset and all of that is like A-Trak and Cam.
Top tier.
Killer. Run it.
Yeah. Wait, let me give you guys the exclusive on something. Hold on.
Please. Shit. I love just this alone. We mentioned Cam'ron and we're getting something cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Hold on.
I gotta find my Pink Panther shirt real quick.
Cam'ron is just the coolest, man.
Cam'ron is the coolest.
You heard that that girl is trying to get money for that photo though, the Cam'ron photo.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Which photo?
The photo.
I gotta do it
now.
now.
We're about to drop.
We're
about to drop the thing vinyl.
I need
that's
to cop
fire
that for sure.
Yeah, thanks. We're dropping that in a week, I think.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So sick.
Dang.
Handsome man. This guy's on the back.
That's literally the first look right here. So dropping, I believe, in a week.
That's
comes with a poster and sites.
I think it should have been the yearbook photo on there, but that's just my opinion.
Only if we get his yearbook photo.
We gotta get his to complete it.
It took 9 years to do this.
Oh shit!
Damn.
But here we are. Cam's great though, lovely guy. Like and it was really fun to make those records with him, and especially because I don't know, I like artists who are kind of idiosyncratic. That artists that have like a style of beat that you mentally associate with them, and just that are consistently themselves through all the trends of the years. And yes, Cam's like that for sure, and I'm always, I'm flattered that he trusted me to like put this record together, and even just, once I would get the verses down in the studio with him, he would, never ask to like approve a mix or whatever. Like I changed the production completely on a lot of the songs, more than just mixing. Like a lot of tracks on this album were recorded to a whole different beat, because we'd just be in the studio and I would play him stuff and like whatever, he would gravitate to something. Let's do that one. And when I'm in the studio with a rapper, especially someone who is hard to pin down, which is the case with Cam, my main priority is just getting a good vocal recorded, getting a good vocal performance down. More than likely, I'm going to take that vocal home and completely change the beat afterwards, and just take my time to create the song that I want to make. But he gave me that freedom. Like he was always cool. I would meet up with him and months later, hey, I changed the beat to that one song. You want to hear it? Sure. Play it. Cool. You know, so that was fun because I get to no, and like cool, I don't know, but maybe I'm yeah, and like I'm you know, I'm a little stubborn with my shit, so like I get to make like my fantasy album with one of my favorite rappers, and
that's so tight.
You know, it did take you know, many runs over a couple of years to like get enough performances down to like really have the album I wanted to have. But yeah, again, I got to make the album I wanted to make, you know, and a lot of those sessions were hilarious. And you know, it started with Dame connecting us, you know. It was me hitting Dame in like 2013 and being like, you think
Dame Dash, that is.
Cam'ron verse yeah, Dame and Dash.
For everybody,
he's executive producer.
Yeah.
And even just getting to know, getting to know him more, because I knew Dame just, you know, from the Rockefeller years or whatever, but like he and I had never like made something together, and he was already kind of out of the record industry by that point. He was doing other projects, and he was kind of excited to like make a record again, and it was his idea to, you know, pair us up for more than a song or a verse, to be like, no, you guys need to make like an EP or a project or something. And then like, you know, he really wanted us to like tour this more. And then it took so many years that by the time the record came out, like, you know, we didn't get to like take it on the road as much as we initially discussed. But like at this point, I'm just happy the record's out. But yeah, to go and hang out with Damon Dash and go to Cam'ron's house, and like Cam'ron's cooking for everyone, and then we go to the booth and just make a couple records and get home crazy late at night. But I'm like, shit, I got 3 new songs to piece together now. It was just fun, man. Like the fan in me is always going to be alive, and is always going to be like, whoa, this is cool. You know?
That's what I was saying. I was like, I would be so nervous to like work on something from somebody that I'm a fan of. Like, dog, this is horse and carriage Cam'ron.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. How do you take the fanboy out
and just be like, trust me, dog, I got this.
Yeah.
It's more, I don't know. I think there's a way to flip that around and use it. Like it's more like, let me try to figure out how to make the record that the fan in me wants to hear. So it's not intimidating. It's more like, if anything, it's like tapping into that fan and just looking for the thing that I want to hear. You know,
that's a cool way of looking at it.
You know, in a sense, like I've been in various sides of the record industry or whatever you want to call it since I was a young teen or preteen either. So like being in the room with someone doesn't necessarily like intimidate me. Like I think I've learned early on to just be myself, and like hopefully I can click with someone. If we don't click, it's all good. We don't have to do something. But you know, I just stay myself and figure out some sort of, you know, way to bond with someone, something where we connect, and try to make records. Like it might not always work with Cam and I, you know. Dipshits was one of the first things we recorded, and that song Humphrey, that was, some of the fans remember that we couldn't put out because of a sample thing, but that was on SoundCloud like early on. You know, we there was something that clicked there. So then it's a question of like, cool, there is chemistry here, let's keep going.
Yeah,
you know.
And he was on
like
no time
part of like,
which is
time doesn't exist for Cam'ron.
Complete human construct.
But you know, I sort of admire that too, because it's just like, it's art first, and it's like, or you know, it's sort of like, if it feels good, cool. If it doesn't, never mind. You know, so you just follow the path of like what feels right. And you know, through the years, also recording with various artists and vocalists, like you sort of learn that like half of your job when you're the producer in that room is just to sort of like keep someone comfortable and like keep them focused on the thing you want them to do, and you know, sort of read the vibes of the room, and you know, try to make sure that you get that performance down. And if it has to take a bunch of hours, cool. He actually records pretty fast. He writes and records fast. You know, it's just a question of like getting him in that mindset where he's down to focus and listen to those beats, and then he'll be like, all right, we'll do this one and this one today. And then, you know, records, does his, punch-ins or ad-libs or whatever else. And when it's done, it's done. He doesn't even really need to listen to it again. And then I take it home and I chisel away at it. Yeah.
That's cool.
And remember, I'm slow, so then it takes a while.
Right.
And then we get it 9 years later.
You got Cam too.
Yeah, so it's not just his fault. It's not just his fault. And in this case, there was a lot of like I got some samples replayed and da. There's that whole game too. Like sample based hip hop is is a little bit complicated
it's a game.
It's a game. Yeah.
Well, man, in that regard, we owe you 2 thank yous for putting Cam'ron on wax.
Facts.
And for putting A-Trak on hip hop stuff. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that, to me, those are 2 fucking meeting of 2 very cool worlds that I'm stoked on. I cannot wait to buy this record.
Oh, for sure. And I want to talk about what I think is the perfect summertime shy record, the Rick Wilson Chromeo A-Trak Clusterfunk.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
That
just came out.
It's so good.
Summertime shy is for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. And man, that also was a product of the pandemic in a lot of ways. Rick Wilson is managed by a friend of mine. And so my boy was just sort of like, yo, you got to check out my artist, Rick. And then, and he did an EP with Terrace Martin. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, there's a dude that's rapping on some funk shit. Like, all right, cool. And during the pandemic, my brother was even like staying at my house here with me for a couple months in LA. We both wanted to get out of New York because the New York apartment thing was not ideal.
Snug.
Yeah. So I'm just here at the house. And there was one day where I was like, yo, Dave, check this guy out. Like, my boy manages him, raps good, and talking about a lot of like socially conscious issues, and it's the summer of that, like George Floyd and BLM was happening. And but Dave was also like, oh, he raps over funk. Well, shit, maybe we should all do some shit together. Ask him if he wants to do a project with all of us, like A-Trak and Chromeo. And we connected those dots, and Rick came out to LA. We went to Chromeo's studio and we started making a couple tracks. And that too took a couple of runs. Like, we did a couple records, and then a few months passed, we're all working on other shit, get back together, let's do a couple more. And eventually we put together the whole album. But yeah, I'm super proud of what we did, and it was fun for me to like connect dots. There's certain songs where the Chromeo guys did more of the production, and I was like just coaching Rick when he was recording, and making little change ups, but like mostly piecing it together. There's other songs where I picked up more of the production work myself. I might grab like a couple of stems of synths and things that Dave and P started, and changed the drums or did whatever myself. So it was really a group effort, and then even piecing the album together, we all kind of brainstormed on like, how to build these little segues between the songs and put all these little sound bites. Like, I told Rick to like, me and Dave were brainstorming, and we kind of came up with this idea of like having all these little sound effects and sound bites that come back that are in the background and reoccur during the whole album. And then I had to figure that out with Rick, and he came back to visit me for a couple of days, and he had all these little voice notes on his phone. Like, oh, this is a funny voicemail that my mom's left, and this is a poem that my aunt recited that was like, she's a teacher, or like, oh, this is some funny shit from a trip in the UK. And I just like grabbed little pieces of that, sampled some of it, or put it between the songs, and we just wove this whole thing together. Because like, me and Dave were talking, like, even once we had all the songs individually recorded, we felt like there was still a layer that was missing, because we got to really know Rick as a person and what he's into, what he's about, what his personality is like, what his priorities are, what he cares about. And we were like, this kid's really passionate and interesting, and he's more than just a rapper or vocalist. He's well read. He's part of many communities that all make sense together. Let's try to paint that picture for the world to see. So, but that put me in like a mixtape mindset of, you know, if you listen to the segues between the songs. So that was kind of like the final touch. But yeah, man, super happy that that's out. And even thinking of the features, being like, all right, like let's get Stick from Dead Prez. Like that was, I was just so psyched to even get to know Stick and figure that out, you know. But my boy Sean C, who I've known since for as long as I've known the Executioners and Rock Raider and all, because Sean C's he's an original X-Men. He was the A&R at Loud for the X-Men album, for the Dead Prez album.
Okay.
So I was like, oh shit, well, Sean could probably connect me to Stick, you know? And then we were like, let's get someone new from Chicago. And then we got King Louie on the first song. So just figuring out those, you know, little bits of extra color to add to the album.
I think it sounds perfect for summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like cruising down Lakeshore Drive, like just chilling in Chicago. Awesome. Like it's perfect.
Backyard barbecue, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Give me that.
You know?
Yeah, thanks.
June 16th is the Fool's Gold 15th year anniversary Indie Sleaze Party. Two parts to that. Number one, I don't remember Indie Sleaze ever being a term during that time. Do you?
No, I'm pretty sure like the Instagram account Indie Sleaze.
Yeah.
I credit the woman who does that account. I think she created that
for
term.
Sure. Yeah, because I was like, was it ever, or it was just Bloghouse? And
but I mean, but even Bloghouse I think was coined
after
at the end or later on. You know, but Indie Sleaze is like even more recent.
Yeah.
Yep. That Instagram account created that expression.
It's incredible. Like looking at that account, I'm just like, it's such a fucking blast from the past. Like Four Loko and Sparks and like Scion Socks and like all of these moments where you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, like, every dude in Portland was looking like your cover off of Toast.
Oh yeah.
Every dude, Dora up right there, man. Cut off vest. Every guy.
It was a time, man.
It was.
I think this is the most fun lineup I've seen in New York in a long time. Is this party you got coming up? Yeah. If you want to tell us a little bit about
that. For sure. Like this whole year is the Fool's Gold 15th anniversary, and we're doing a couple parties for it. But this is the one where we really wanted to, lean in on the whole history of the label, and part of the thought process also was seeing that there's a new version of that sort of indie sleaze, indie electro scene. That's why we booked Frost Children and DOS and The Help and Club Eat. There's a couple acts on there that are new and that are really popping off in New York, or even a little bit of LA, but mostly New York. And if you look at pictures of like their parties, it looks like a party from 2005. It was like, crazy. There's a bridge to build between, the side of the lineup that's Afi and Bag Raiders and Naeem and Treasure Fingers and myself, and what, this younger scene is doing. And, we brought in the Cobra Snake and a couple other homies to help bridge the gap. And we're doing it at Webster Hall, which is where so many of the classic Fool's Gold parties of that, that 2000s era took place. But Webster Hall let us take over the whole venue. So it's also, it's the main room upstairs, but also Deluxe Flux downstairs. So full venue takeover. June 16th, tickets available now. So book that trip, come hang out with us. Yeah,
man. That's the quintessential party for anyone that was going out between 2000, I would say 2003 to 2011. Like everyone that's at home now, go get a babysitter, come out, like, don't go to bed before 10 o'clock, like come have fun, that was such an era. Also too, June 8th, the month of June is very important to you because June 8th was the release of Heads Will Roll, the A-Trak remix.
Oh man, I don't even remember when it came out. But
cool. June 8th, 2010. You mentioned in a previous interview that when that came out, it was running behind on deadline. Obviously, it was.
Now you guys know.
Yeah, you get it when you get it. You mentioned though that you sent it to a couple homies to hear, and then it kind of blew up organically as a grassroots movement. For a release like that, who gets that remix first? Like, what are some of the people that you send it to, and then you judge? Like, what's
Well, I was, what I remember was I was on tour in Australia when I finished the remix. And it was one of those tours. We used to do those tours like almost every year, where it'd be like a festival that hits a couple cities in Australia, and it was the same lineup on all the stops. But I spent a bunch of months working on that remix. And yeah, like you mentioned, by the time I delivered it, the label was like, we're kind of done with the cycle of Heads Will Roll as a single. And we have like a Tommy Sunshine remix or whatever that we already put out. So we're actually moving to the next single now. So they were like, we're not really sure what to do with this. And they didn't really accept my remix at first that they had, asked me to do, just because of how late I was. But I was on this festival tour, and I was dropping into my sets, and pretty sure that on the same tour, I'm trying to remember, but like, I believe Errol Alkan and Aeroplane and maybe Boys Noise, I'm not sure, just, a couple other DJs, maybe Busy P, like just, I definitely sent it to Busy P and Mehdi and all of those guys, but I'm trying to remember who exactly. I think Tiga was even on that tour, and it was like a few of us dropping it in our sets, and it was having a good reaction, and then I came home and gave it to a couple more DJs. But it's like sort of that run or that crew, that started playing it a lot. And then the label, within a few weeks was kind of like, oh yeah, we're hearing that it's, getting some good reactions. Cool, let's schedule a release. But yeah, I didn't get paid much for that remix, and it was a one-time fee. That's just kind of how remixes are. And it, it grew with time, it was in Project X,
right?
And that really blew it up a lot. But that was almost 2 years after it came out. So at first it was just like one of the big club tracks that DJs in this specific scene were playing, when it came out. At first it was just that, but on any given year, there's like a dozen of those. Like, oh yeah, this record's big, and this record's big, and this record's big in the scene. But like, I want a year and a half or so after it came out, then the Project X comes out, and then it becomes this sort of synonymous with party. And even after that, there was more phases of, there's a point where every DJ was making their own edits of it, and it became like just sort of like one of those big festival drops that you heard in all kinds of different edits. It's kind of crazy that it still plays.
Did you know you had something as big as you did?
No, I just knew that there was something there, but like, I certainly didn't think that DJs would still play it 10 years later. I knew there was something that was, that was going to work to some extent, but you can never know how far it's going to go.
Cause it's like, I'd say that's like classic material. That's like,
it is.
That's like Gypsy Woman recognizability. Like that's going to be around forever.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Kenny
Beats dropped it. Show me love. Yeah.
That's like Show Me Love.
It in his set both weekends.
It's going to be around forever.
Yeah.
That's dope. And I don't know. Bigger than me. I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah.
So sick. We have a couple questions left, and then I know we've been taking up a lot of your time. We're gonna send you on your way. Top 3 A-Trak blog era songs of all time. It doesn't have to be your own.
Oh. So what, like my like 3 of my favorites?
Yeah.
Yep.
From the blog era. Boys Noise and Down. Twerkers love to edit, even though it's just an edit. Like it's
Hell yeah.
2 songs that they put together.
Yeah.
But I love it. And let me think of another one. Serious Mo High Together.
Oh hell yeah. Dream Collaboration.
I don't know. I've never really thought just that way. Like I don't have like, I don't know. Like a lot of the people I've worked with have just happened out of either a specific track that I made where I would think, oh, who would sound good on this, and I would just think of it on that moment, or certain connections that happen sort of organically. But I don't really have like the bucket list collaboration. I mean, to try to give you an answer, I don't know, Kenny Dope. Like,
hell yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Sure.
Very possible.
I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're friends. We're friends, and hopefully it'll happen at some point. But someone like that, you know?
Yeah.
So dope. Yeah.
Neek, do the thing, man.
Yeah, fast and neat.
So we like to set our friends up with fast food endorsement meals.
Okay.
What we like to do around these parts is we want to know is what is the A-Trak meal? What is it and where is it? What is your go-to fast food meal? And you know, this is a business opportunity, so it's got to be regional. It can't be local.
So wait, you're going to send me a meal? Is that what you're saying? Or it's just,
I mean, it's
just
for
kind
pretend.
of like a
If you would like me to send you, McDonald's, I will.
What's my go-to?
The least I can do after heads will roll.
I mean, as much as I probably should say something that has flan in it, no,
fast food flan.
Yes.
Fast food flan. No, but like in and out, double, animal style, protein style.
The poutine style, like that. That's what we're gonna call it.
Protein style.
Oh, I thought you said the poutine style. I was like, I like that. That's what we're gonna call it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yo,
what are we drinking? What are we drinking?
Sprite.
Okay.
Yes.
Sprite 7
It has to be specifically because it's not the
Yeah.
A-Trak meal if it doesn't have the drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Let's go with one song. We have our podcast playlist that everyone on the podcast, whenever they come on, we say add one song to it. What is your song you want to add?
Interesting. I'm gonna put De La Ego Tripping.
Hell yeah. Now available on streaming.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
We are developing our DJ biopic cinematic universe. So like the MCU or the DCU that James Gunn is going to be announcing pretty soon here. Kind of like the Sony Spider-Man universe that Kraven the Hunter is now a rated R movie. Yes, it's going to be bloody and gory, and that's exactly what we need for a Spider-Man villain movie. So anyways, with our DJ biopic cinematic universe, who is playing A-Trak? And it could be anybody in the entertainment realm, dead or alive, or even animated.
Ooh, who's playing me? Like what actor's playing me?
Yeah.
Fuck. I don't know. I'm trying to think if it should be someone who looks like me or just something ridiculous.
I think Bird Peterson said Denzel Washington for him, so to give you a barometer of where we're at.
Okay, so you know what? Willem Dafoe should play me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. That's
through the whole movie too. I want him.
Yeah.
At
I want him at DMC.
Let's see those acting chops.
Yeah. It's just like the worst. He's got like one of the inaccurate. He's got one of those like pinwheel hats. Yeah. A young A-Trak.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's great.
2 questions before we go.
Yep.
Is there anyone you would ever tour DJ for ever again?
I don't know. I mean, never say never, but like, it feels like, I don't know. It feels like a stretch. It's not even based. It's not a question of who it is. It's more like it would need to really be, it would need to be a position or a relationship where I could be very involved in the creative and in the shaping of the music. You know, I'm not interested in just being like, backing track guy.
Of course,
but you know what I mean. But if there was a situation where I could work with someone that I'm a fan of musically, but where I could, really help shape the direction of the show, it'll be based on that. It's no one specific, but you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
not a question of like, oh, if so and so calls me.
Sure.
More like I would just need to find a match where I'm like, this would be inspiring for me. This would be an interesting new chapter. You know, based on that kind of decision.
Yeah. Last but not least, any advice you want to share for upcoming DJs and producers?
Sure. Just like anything.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. From the book of A-Trak.
From the book of A-Trak. I feel like you know, I feel like I often tell people to try to tap into, you know, what makes them unique as an artist and just then amplify that and try to think of ways to reach new people with that, like clever, whether it be with the way that you put out your music or your mixes or the way you market it or whatever, like really honing in on what is your identity as an artist and then figuring out ways to push that, you know. And the more you could be aware of like how it's perceived from the outside. If you're a young DJ that's just starting to scratch, sometimes it's, you know, when you're trying to perfect that thing that you do, if it's just scratching, record your practice sessions, listen back, hear it the way other people hear it. You'll find little stuff to nudge and fix. But if you're getting into production, you know, sometimes it's a question of obviously testing your tracks out or finding other like-minded producers and, you know, thinking of ways to push out your music, you know, as a collective or with peers who are on a similar tip. Or all that is just ways to perfect that thing that makes you you. But so I think the most important thing in, you know, your development as a DJ or artist is like getting a very keen sense of what you stand for, what you do, because then you just work on perfecting that and like presenting it to the world.
The legend, A-Trak.
Yeah, man.
Dude, we
Fellas,
appreciate
thank you.
it.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Much
We had
respect
such a
to
good time.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
man.
Much respect to all you and for what you guys do and thanks. There's a new Chromeo single that just came out today with
Yes,
LaRue.
there is.
Everybody go
There
check
sure
that out
is.
too. It's called Replacements. But yeah,
Tell Dave we
check
said
out-
what up.
Yeah, that was my favorite Coachella moment when they brought out LaRue for In for the
Oh
Cut.
my
Oh, awesome.
God.
It's just like
Sick as
Awesome.
hell.
LaRue looks such like a badass when she came out and just did that
Yeah.
acapella. Oh my God. Just
Yep.
didn't even smile either, sunglasses and
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
Come on,
Exactly.
man.
yeah.
I know.
Fire.
Despacio, but we'll save that for a whole nother podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do
All
a
right,
2
cool.
hour on Despacio.
Cool.
Make sure
Thanks,
you tap
guys.
in with A-Trak. The Rick Wilson album is great.
Yeah.
Just go down that rabbit hole of listening to the Cam'ron album, the Rick Wilson album. There's
And
so
all of
much,
Fool's Gold.
and all of Fool's Gold. It's the 15th anniversary. It's
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
legendary.
So
Yeah.
sick.
Let's celebrate.
Yeah, which is so crazy
Cool.
to talk about. Thank you, A-Trak. Take care,
Thank
man.
you so
guys.
much, man.
Thank you, brother.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Peace.
Peace.